Let me join with my colleagues in this National Assembly in commending the Honourable Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh and his team for presenting to this National Assembly another budget, a budget that speaks and responds to the aspiration of the people of Guyana, and a budget that certainly will take us forward as a people united. Mr. Speaker, 2014 budget is being presented in a political context that is unique in post-independent Guyana, a political context nearly all of us would recognize is pregnant with both opportunities and challenges. But a political context, if not handled and if not maneuvered insensibly, can also undo some of the developmental achievements we've made as a nation. So, Mr. Speaker, this budget, framed in the third year of President Donald Ramotar's administration, is one that is responsive and it's one that is relevant to that unique political context I have referred to earlier. And certainly, Mr. Speaker, it presents another opportunity in the year 2014 for all of us collectively to take full use of the policies and, more importantly, the measures that have been outlined therein, so that we can make this new and perhaps this challenging political reality we operate within, we can convert that into many, many opportunities for our nation. Mr. Speaker, the focus of this year's budget, as we've heard outlined by our able Minister of Finance and many colleagues who have spoken, even some of the colleagues on the other side have recognized some of the merits therein, is about creating opportunities for our people. I wish to say not only creating opportunities for our people, but creating opportunities for all our people, all the people of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, we also live in a very, one can say, unique, but also a gifted social makeup and social circumstances. We're a nation of many diversities, and we're a nation in which we have to ensure that policies, programs, and projects, that they take into account these social realities. And again, Mr. Speaker, if we look at the focus of this budget, it is about ensuring equity, it is about ensuring fairness, and it is about ensuring that all the people of Guyana, if they live in the Rupununi, if they live in Linden, if they live in Parika, if they live in Georgetown, if they live in if they live in Pokwani, if they live in New Amsterdam, Port Moran, wherever they live in Skeldon, Oriala, Siparuta, wherever they live, Mr. Speaker, there is something for them in this 2014 budget. It is about equity, it is about fairness, it is about opportunities for all. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, the PPP civic government, now in our 23rd year, and we have many, many achievements, solid achievements, incontestable achievements, and even some of the colleagues in and out of this National Assembly and the international community as a whole. Several speakers have referred to statements made by international financial institutions, statements made by individuals and organizations not known to be friends of this government. They have pointed to the solid, sound, and certainly transformational achievements under the PPP Civic. But, Mr. Speaker, the 2014 budget, as presented by our Minister, and representing the vision of our President and our government, is also about transforming our country, transforming our economy, and ensuring that our economy is resilient, not only for national circumstances, but also resilient in terms of dealing with what we can say unpredictable international developments. And so, Mr. Speaker, the 2014 budget is about positioning and also preparing Guyana. Preparing Guyana not only for today, but also positioning Guyana for sometimes the unknown and the known tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, much has been said and due recognition has been given to the economic performance and the consistent growth of our economy that has outmatched those, particularly in this hemisphere, particularly in this region, but also countries that have faced similar history, similar social, political, and economic circumstances, near and far. And if we do a comparison, Mr. Speaker, we will see that Guyana has certainly outpaced many of those other similar societies. In fact, Mr. Speaker, Guyana in many regards, in recent years, we have defied the critics, we have defied the skeptics, and we continue to shine and shine very brightly. Mr. Speaker, our Honourable Minister of Finance would have outlined, and this was reinforced by my colleagues on this side, the performance of the various subsectors of our national economy. And these have contributed to the overall growth. But an emerging, in recent years, and a much more, not because I am the subject minister, but an emerging sector, a sector that is very critical and very central to our economic growth and also to fostering social stability, is that of the natural resources and environment sector. And if we look, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the contribution of the natural resources sector and natural resources and the environment sector to our economy, we can see that this is growing and certainly expanding in many regards. And as we've heard from the Honourable Minister of Finance, we can speak about the contribution of gold, and I want to, Mr. Speaker, on this note, to single out our small and medium-scale miners who have created history, in this land. And I want all of us in this National Assembly to recognize their performance, whereby they've been able to produce and declare in excess of 481,000 ounces. And this is the first time we've done so, even in the absence of a large gold mine. The last time we came close to that is when we had the Omai gold mines in operation, and then when we had the combined production in this regard. But this is the first time, Mr. Speaker, that we've seen our small and medium-scale miners making use of the opportunity and rising to the challenge and certainly presenting our country with enormous opportunities. And Mr. Speaker, too, last year, if we look in terms of diamond, we've seen our declaration for diamond has increased by an excess of 55%. And we can also, if we move down in terms of the mining and quarrying sector, in terms of quarrying, we've seen quarry production, Mr. Speaker, has increased by as much as 40%. This speaks to not only the public works projects that are taking place, but it also speaks to the dynamic private construction sector that is taking place in our economy. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at the forestry sector too, we've seen an increase, Mr. Speaker, of close to 10%. And that increase, Mr. Speaker, has taken place particularly in terms of the value-added sector, because we've always recognized that in long term and ensuring the development of our forestry resources, it is not only about the extraction of logs and the exports of logs, but also ensuring that in our country that we have maximum value. And in fact, last year, Mr. Speaker, we saw a decrease in log export of in excess of 12%, an increase, but also for the same period, an increase of in excess of 30% of value-added product. And that's, again, Mr. Speaker, speak to an industry that is responding to the opportunities. Also, Mr. Speaker, we've recognized the challenges that we've had with bauxite, particularly with the global market situation. But that did not daunt the two major companies. And that is why last year they've invested in excess of $17 million US. And this year, Mr. Speaker, they're poised to increase and even diversify their production and their export. And Mr. Speaker, as the budget provides and the Minister of Finance spoke to, we are making that direct and that intrinsic link in terms of ensuring that our economic development, and more increasingly, our economic development, it hinges primarily on how we're able to mobilize and how we're able to develop our human capital. But that other rich capital that we possess is our natural capital. And that is why this year, Mr. Speaker, it is about harnessing, it is about ensuring that we maximize the opportunities within the natural capital. And that I speak to as the natural resources and environment sector. And the Honourable Member, Dr. Rupert Roopnarine, last night in his presentation posed a number of questions, and very important questions. These questions certainly, Mr. Speaker, speak to some of the current issues which we are confronting and which we must confront collectively if we are going to move the natural resources, or which we call the extractive industry, in our country forward. Speak to the issue of how it is, can we minimize the impact of an expanding mining sector, particularly gold. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at the programs and the initiatives that we've launched in terms of clean and new technology, one, we are now a signatory to the Minamata Convention, that is for the reduction and eventual elimination of the use of mercury, not only in mining, but in other activities, but because of its prominent role and the use of mercury traditionally for recovery in the mining sector. We have committed internationally to transition out from the use of mercury. And Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report to this National Assembly that since the last budget presentation, we are in fact making steady, and we are in fact making, in a way, hurried progress along this direction. We've had a number of companies, Mr. Speaker, through incentives provided by our government and through support, especially technology transfer and training by the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, the regulatory agency for the mining sector, we've been able to support the sector. We've been able to support even suppliers in accessing this technology and also in making it available. Last year, Mr. Speaker, at the end of last year, we were able to announce a $1 billion program to assist the industry in moving away from mercury. And just recently, Mr. Speaker, in discussions with the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, we have come to an arrangement whereby we will be approaching financial institutions in terms of managing this facility, but also looking at a component of this resource in terms of us learning from our past efforts in ensuring that the right and the appropriate technology to our geology, to our geological reality and conditions that these technology are brought. And so, Mr. Speaker, in response to that particular concern and question, we have the commitment, We have the buy-in of the sector. We have the buy-in of all stakeholders in moving in this area. An issue of diversification, because we don't only want the mining sector to be only focused on gold. And we've started work in terms of diversification, looking at other minerals. And that issue, Mr. Speaker, is one again in which we require collective resolve, and which we do not hope that we will blow hot and cold on. And last year, Mr. Speaker, you would have been, or earlier this year, you would have been aware of the debate, the public debate on the Mouri project and the granting of the PGGS in the New River area, Mr. Speaker. And much has been said about that. But, Mr. Speaker, the underlying objective of that and all efforts is for us to understand what it is we have, the resources that we have, and the focus of that particular PGGS, or the focus of that particular effort, was for us to develop, as it were, a rare earth element, which, in fact, Mr. Speaker, is a very, very scarce commodity, a very, very scarce item. And it was in pursuit of diversification and understanding the geological makeup and understanding the resources that we have that we embarked on that. So the commitment is still there. And in fact, when we speak now to our miners locally, and even when we have foreign investors, Mr. Speaker, it is about ensuring that we make maximum use. And in that regard, we continue to work with not only operators, persons who have prospecting licenses, but also with our partners, be it the US, be it the Canadians, be it the Chileans, be it the Chinese, and other friendly government, Mr. Speaker, in terms of giving us support so that we can have a comprehensive geological and updated geological map so that we understand and know the resources. And that will allow us, as it were, to pursue diversification, but also for us to engage in sensible mining in which we can reduce the impact. But I'll come back to that in terms of dealing with what else we're dealing on the environmental front. But going forward to Mr. Speaker in the area of gold is also looking at the opportunities. And we have previously spoken about a number of large projects. And again, the question was asked, Mr. Speaker, well, can we be provided with an update? And yes, there is an update. In fact, yes, there is much progress, and there's much to be said. Regarding Guyana Gold Fields, Mr. Speaker, is expected that towards the end of this year, and already much activities have started, close to $200 million have already been invested, and close to about 200 Guyanese are already employed, and very soon a number of more individuals will be employed in terms of construction and other activities for this very, very large gold mining operation. If we look in terms of ETK Sand Springs 2, another large mining project, much progress has been made, and again, this investment will be in excess of $350 million, Mr. Speaker, and sometime next year, they're still finalizing the time schedule, and I don't want to commit the company nor commit myself, but during the course of 2015 again, there will be much significant development in terms of the realization of that large-scale mining. And, Mr. Speaker, there's been another progress, rapid development, that some of our colleagues here would have noticed in the newspapers today. One of the other investors that we've had out of Australia, Troy Resources, Mr. Speaker, in terms of developing the Kuruni project. Already, that project will see the employment of close to 300 Guyanese in the short term, immediately, in terms of the construction. And like the other large gold projects, we'll see a minimum coming to the government, to the state, as it were, directly of in excess of $25 million per annum in revenue, and indirectly, that goes all the way up to $200 million US per annum. And these, Mr. Speaker, these particular investments, they speak directly in terms of providing opportunities, but also in taking the sector forward in this regard. The question was also asked about bauxite and what is taking place in the area of bauxite, with interest in Rusal, BGCI, and Bosai at Linden, BGCI Rusal in the Berbice River, and Bosai Linden. And all of us know, Mr. Speaker, that we have resurrected the bauxite industry. We have resurrected bauxite industry. And we have brought communities that were abandoned. Communities, be it in Region 10, in Linden, Ituni, or up the Berbice River, Pokwani, or Raima, Ururu. We have brought where there was a feeling of hopelessness when persons, after the devastation that came about to the closure of bauxite, then we revived hope. And we were able to attract foreign investment and restarted and rejuvenated the bauxite industries, the Linden bauxite as well as the Berbice River bauxite. And Mr. Speaker, today we can boast of both companies, notwithstanding a very in the world bauxite situation. If we look at world bauxite prices, especially for metallurgical grade bauxite, calcine grade bauxite, that particularly that we export, and we're no longer a monopoly. For the information of the honourable members, we're no longer a monopoly because China has now lifted its export restriction on calcine grade bauxite, so there's competition now. And notwithstanding these realities, Mr. Speaker, the Guyana bauxite industry, the Guyanese bauxite industry continues to be one in which there has been considerable progress, and this year there's poised for expansion. Not expansion in terms of investment, but also expansion in terms of export as well as job creation, direct and indirect. The question was asked about Rusal and what is taking place at Rusal in this regard, and what is happening at Kurbuka 22. And yes, honourable member, this new mine, significant work has been made, and it is expected that in the next 2 months, we will see greater activities coming about as a result of the work done and the investment done in that particular area, which again is to give hope and ensure the continuity of that particular operation. And the communities around too are very enthusiastic, are very much enthusiastic about what is taking place. The question was asked by one of the honourable members about Hururu, and the suggestion that this investment has taken advantage of an Amerindian community in the Berbice River. And Mr. Speaker, several honourable members here will recall that in an appearance before the Natural Resources Sectoral Committee, a request was made of me to table all the documentations as it pertains to that particular arrangement, as it pertains to the investment of what is taking place. And I wish to report that I have submitted same, and it will show very clearly the deliberate efforts made by the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs, working with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment and the companies, but very, 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 very critically, the role played by the communities that ensuring that at the end of the day, that the best deal, the best arrangement was had for that community. And the documents are there, it's public, and I've already tabled this to the Natural Resources Subcommittee. So let us not get away that these investments are cheating, robbing, and denying people of opportunity. In fact, it's the opposite. They are providing opportunities and protecting and enriching and enshrining and expanding the rights and opportunities of people in those communities, Mr. Speaker. In terms of Bosai, Mr. Speaker, the question was asked, have Bosai been able to develop a new mine. And let me say for both Rusal and for Bosai, Mr. Speaker, yes, there have been some adjustments to the original proposals made in terms of investment plans. But those adjustments came about not unilaterally taken by the companies themselves, but those adjustments were dictated by the international market conditions and realities. And the adjustments that were made to the investment plans of both companies were not done to the disadvantage of the people of Guyana, were not done in terms to waste or to misuse the valuable natural resource of the country, but in fact the adjustments took into account first and foremost the interests of all the people of Guyana, particularly those communities. And I'll give you an example, Mr. Speaker. In the original proposal for Bosai, the plan was for us and for Guyana that we were going to make the Block 37 available, which contains significant deposit. But because of the changed business plan and investment proposal by Bosai, we decided that we will not proceed in giving the company, in allocating the company the Block 37 concession. And in fact, they had to look at other areas. And some of the other areas, Mr. Speaker, that are looking in terms of developing new mine because of those changing reality would be Yararibo, Aruba, Upper Harukaro, East Bank Karakara, and the West Bank areas. And those, I've listed those areas in direct response to the honourable member's question in terms of their plans. And it's expected that these particular areas and these new mines will have a life of in excess of 20 years, with a production of close to 500,000 tons of mats per annum. And so, Mr. Speaker, the prospects are good for bauxite. The investments and the commitment by the company, notwithstanding the international situation, those are certainly very, very solid in that regard. Mr. Speaker, whilst we focused on the big investments and we've looked at the big projects, I want to touch a little on what we've done in terms of providing support to the sector. What we've done in terms of providing support to our small miners and our small operators. And on that note, Mr. Speaker, I want to make a brief diversion. And it seems that in our debate, not only in the National Assembly, but in some of the public discourse, we seem to be developing a feeling or creating the impression of some sort of Asia-phobia when it comes to investment and in terms of attracting of opportunities to our country. And I wish to remind this National Assembly that the first large Asian investment in the natural resources sector that took place and happened under the PNC administration, and it involved Barama and Samling group of companies. And so, from time to time, and I think we need to, Mr. Speaker, as someone of some sort of Asian heritage, Chinese, I think, Mr. Speaker, correct me if I'm wrong,